He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Kia ora, nau mai hara mai ki te ao hurihanga. Hello and welcome to Our Changing World. Ko Kragan Cannon tēnei. This week, we've got a story from senior producer William Ray, who investigates some groundbreaking developments in pest control.
By this point, we all know the story of introduced pests in Aotearoa. Highly efficient and adaptable plants and animals enter an ecosystem with few natural predators, and they wreak havoc on the local ecosystem. People have been fighting back, but it's a difficult battle. But now, a new type of pest hunter has come onto the scene, possibly more deadly than any before. They have a top speed of over 60 kilometres an hour and are equally at home swooping through the open air or weaving through dense forest. They can track and kill all kinds of prey, from microscopic fungal spores to pine trees. They can hunt by day or night, tracking body heat using thermal vision. They don't need sleep, they don't eat, they don't even breathe. They are UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, or as they're generally best known, drones. Over the past few years, drones have been used in all kinds of ways in science, filmmaking, industry, and increasingly in Aotearoa, New Zealand, they're finding a niche in pest control.
You see these deer?
So that's a drone shot there?
Yeah, that's a drone shot. So I have directed a hunter to these deer. He's actually just shot this deer to the right, and it's about to fall over. Then, there's our hunter.
Jordan Munn's a hunting contractor. He runs a company called Track and Trigger based out of Upper Hutt. He's showing me footage on his laptop of a recent deer culling operation. It's a thermal vision image. The foliage is a sort of ghostly grey, while the body heat from the hunter and the deer make them stand out in bright white. Jordan's operating the drone using a remote control.
Yeah, so here's a deer, and here's the hunter making its way towards the deer. And so the hunter's actually using the drone as an indicator of his direction. The drone's over there, I need to head in that direction. Isn't that crazy?
So, to paint a picture for you, the drone is flying above the deer on the opposite side of the animal from the hunter. So, all the hunter has to do is listen out for the noise of the drone's engines, then slowly creep in that direction until he spots the deer.
The drone is designed to detect the animal, but also guide the hunter. And there's little specific niggly things you can do, like you can use the drone to apply pressure to the animal once the hunter starts to progress. So if the deer becomes wary, you increase the proximity of the drone and it'll distract the deer from the hunter back to the drone. So you can use it as a distraction point as well, and just creep closer and closer and closer, and then it creates a window of opportunity for the hunter to get into the right position. And it's the same with wallabies. You can use the exact same method with wallabies. So the hunter's going, where's the wallaby? The drone's got it because it's an eye in the sky, it has that bird's eye view, and the drone will go and position itself in the right direction. The hunter can go, I need to get around the face and get a visual at that area that the drone's hovering above.
Jordan pulls out one of the drones he's got in the shop for repair. You've probably seen something like it. 4 rotors, battery pack, and a gimbal-mounted thermal camera. The whole thing's about 30 centimetres across and weighs about 1 kilogram.
The drones get bigger and bigger and bigger, but the advantage of these ones is that you can put it in your pack with your team of hunters, and you can load it full of batteries, and you can walk into the landscape and deploy it anywhere at any time. You don't need a big pad, you don't need a base or a big computer screen or anything like that. You can just launch it when you're ready and land it when you're ready. So we've been in areas of the forest where we've found a hole in the canopy, and we've launched it through the hole in the canopy, and it's gone and done its thing, and then it comes back, and we just drop it back through the canopy. So they're very mobile, they're easy to fix, they're cheap to replace. It's not a $50,000 drone that just flies to pieces, and then you're stuffed. The liability is much lower, and they achieve basically the same outcome.
And would you always be going out with these if you're going? I mean, like you say, I guess it depends on what the operation is.
We're becoming more and more reliant on them. It's amazing how the pest control industry's shaped in the last decade. 10 years ago, it was basically non-existent, a thermal camera, right, in a pest contractor's hands. Then within the space of a few years, if you're a pest controller doing night shooting without a thermal unit one way or another, whether it's a handheld or a scope or a drone, you're basically obsolete. So it's changed very quickly, and now we're at the space where every contractor's got a thermal handheld, and then most of them will have a thermal scope. And within a few years, every contractor will have a thermal handheld and a thermal scope and a thermal drone. And if you don't have one of those or all of those, you're lagging behind.
But drones aren't a silver bullet for hunters like Jordan Munn, especially when it comes to hunting smaller animals like wallabies.
They're very elusive in respect, so they get sighted here one day and you go back and look for them and they don't, it's almost like they don't never existed. They're largely nocturnal, so or diurnal, they'll come out during the day, but they tend to favour nighttime. They are quite wary, so they adapt, and they adapt to pressure, and they tend to take cover in dense scrub, and they're not kind of as big as a deer or pig or a goat that can quite often stand above the layer of vegetation, so they tend to be underneath. If you've got tussock, which is sort of waist-height tussock, the wallaby's going to be hard to see.
Jordan's company is currently under contract as a part of a wallaby control program in Canterbury and Otago. New Zealand's home to 5 species of wallaby, all of which were introduced from Australia by European colonists. If you've never seen a wallaby, basically just think a smaller, stockier version of a kangaroo. The largest species in Aotearoa is the Bennett's wallaby. They mostly live around Hunters Hills, southeast of Timaru. That wallaby control program is the responsibility of Gavin Udy at the Otago Regional Council. Gavin says a systematic extermination program in the 1980s severely reduced the number of wallabies in Aotearoa. But over the past few decades, numbers have risen. It's now estimated between 1 or 2 million Bennett's wallabies are hopping around Canterbury and Otago.
They do compete for pasture with livestock, but in addition to that, they also destroy any understory in a forest. They'll eat all the scrub and the understory, and nothing will grow at all. So in that case, I think they're worse than rabbits, and they've certainly got the potential to be worse than rabbits if they were to establish in Otago.
Why are they a particular threat in Otago?
With Otago's landscapes, we've got particularly vulnerable landscapes with the tussock grasslands, and then areas where we've got native forest and then even exotic forestry as well. They can move into all of those land types, if you like, and live there. Unlike rabbits, which are really just going to be in areas where there's pasture.
Currently, wallaby numbers in Otago are relatively low. The Waitaki River, which separates Otago from Canterbury, is mostly too wide and fast-flowing for wallabies to cross, but they do occasionally make it. There are actually thermal imaging cameras with AI detection software designed to spot wallabies and raise the alarm when they're seen crossing the river. However, once wallabies get across the river, they can be extraordinarily difficult to track down. Drones equipped with thermal cameras can help, but they can only cover so much ground with their limited battery life.
Most of our surveillance is done by ground, so we have people out there walking around the mountains and things, trying to find wallabies. So it's very labour intensive.
But now the regional council's trying out a new tactic: hunting wallabies using other wallabies.
So one of the ideas, which we're borrowing from what is used on other pests like goats and tar and that sort of thing, is whether we can actually put radio tracking collars on wallabies, and the wallabies will seek out other wallabies. So we've attached satellite GPS collars to 10 wallabies, and we've released them into areas in South Canterbury that have got quite low densities of wallabies. And we do that specifically so that we can actually generate the research data that we need to be able to actually measure whether this technique actually works or not.
And so far, does it look like it is? Like, are wallabies social in the same way as, goats have proven to be?
Well, the jury's out at the moment. I mean, we released these 10 wallaby in December last year, and since then we've been hunting around them every month. Each month we have an aerial hunting team that goes in and finds those satellite GPS collared animals. They fly around it, and destroy any other wallabies that they find within a 1 kilometre radius around that collared animal. And we keep doing this every month. If the technique is successful, what we're trying to see is whether that wallaby will then actively start seeking out and searching for some mates.
I mean, so I realise we're talking about pests here, but do you ever feel a little bit sorry for these collared wallabies? Like, sort of finding some mates, then suddenly all their mates are killed.
Hopefully it's not going to take it too personally.
Yeah. Back in Upper Hutt, Jordan Munn pulls up a digital map showing the locations of the various spy wallabies they've been tracking in South Canterbury and Otago over the last few months.
This individual up here is a good example. So we shot a reasonable amount of wallabies around this one when it was located in this top end of the riverbed. And then we're not sure, but we presume that we removed all of its social friends, and it went up and over the range and found some more over here. And so we do think it's working. This one's starting to expand its range also. It was primarily living down in the riverbed only, and we've shot a lot of wallabies out of that area during the surveillance, and now it's moving way up into the heads.
The jury's still out on whether spying on wallabies using GPS trackers is a viable strategy. Gavin Udy says they should have all the data they need by the end of 2024. In the meantime, Jordan Munn says the tracking program has actually made some surprising discoveries, including about just how fast wallabies can move across the landscape, even across large mountain ranges.
One of them went about 40 kilometres from Canterbury to Otago and landed in St Bathans.
That's quite a long distance and over quite a big range there.
Yeah, and it happened over a short period of time. It had done that within sort of a week. So it is really interesting. For a long period of time, there's been sightings of wallabies and then responses with no results. We're going, what's actually happening to these wallabies when they're being spotted? And some of these maps are very telling, like this one here, made it all the way across the range within a day to this location. So we know that if they get sighted here, they could be 10 kilometres away the following day. And you can see it's gone from the Canterbury region to the Otago region. So it is interesting information. We're looking at what kind of habitat they settle in. So this one's made it into, some low-lying scrub habitat within a riverbed, and it looks like it's pretty happy there. So is that useful information when we start to see trends like that?
The dream for wallaby control goes something like this. You get some kind of hint wallabies are in an area. Maybe a farmer sees one or spots its droppings. Then a spy wallaby is released to track them down. Once it seems to have found some mates, a hunting contractor like Jordan could be sent in with a thermal imaging drone to detect and destroy the animals. And while drones are just one part of the chain when it comes to wallabies, they could play a more central role in eradicating other types of invasive pests.
I think if you were to have a biosecurity incursion now, you would be choosing whether to take a punt on using a UAV or whether you would just revert to the tried and true. But the UAVs are really catching up to the point where you can kind of have fairly strong confidence that they will perform adequately. But I think that's where the science comes in, is to move it from adequately to performing very well.
Dr. Justin Nairn is the team lead for plant protection physics and chemistry at the Crown Research Agency Scion. He's interested in using drones to eradicate much smaller pests, creepy crawlies like invasive caterpillars or even microscopic organisms like the fungi which cause myrtle rust. These tiny pests are generally controlled using poisons or biocontrol agents, which are often spread using helicopters or airplanes. But Justin thinks in some circumstances using so-called spray drones might be a better option. For one thing, unlike helicopters, they can fly close to the ground or forest canopy on autopilot. And that's not the only advantage.
For spraying, they can fly lower and slower to the target, which generally means that you expect it to be far more precise compared to a helicopter or a fixed-wing aircraft, for instance. Fundamentally, they're cheaper equipment than those large, expensive spray platforms, but at the same time, they definitely come with certain balancing of costs, of lack of efficiency and the like.
That lack of efficiency is basically down to the short range and low carrying capacity of drones compared to conventional aircraft.
Obviously, there's a power to weight ratio. So if you've got a really light drone, it doesn't need much battery to fly, and it can fly for a reasonably long time. But if you're trying to carry anything, there seems to be a limitation of around about 16 minutes of flight time, which is not a lot. And you've got to factor, if you're flying with the wind behind you for 8 minutes, and then you're trying to fly back against that wind, you can't fly for 8 minutes. So there's nuances there.
But Justin Nairn says the gap between drones and conventional aircraft is closing rapidly.
There's new battery technologies that will double the energy density of a battery, so that will significantly increase, basically double, if not more, or probably more than double, the flight time and carrying capacity of the drones. But moreover, we're seeing there's a possibility of basically petrol hybrid engines, and so we're forecasting that those will basically take away a lot of that flight time limitation. And then as you begin to scale it, you're basically going to have a mobile tractor. You can put whatever equipment and tools and whatever you want on it. I think it's going to revolutionize the primary industry, to be honest. Once you start getting drones that are helicopter-sized, able to carry the weight, and when they're autonomously flown as well, like they're far more precise than human-piloted craft.
For now, there are still big technological barriers to having drones the size of helicopters zooming across the landscape, not to mention health and safety concerns. But in the meantime, there are plenty of niches for smaller drones in pest control, which Justin's been investigating through his work at Scion.
For certain applications, for insecticidal applications, a typical treatment is a BTK. It's a bacteria-based bioinsecticide, and it's quite targeted. So it really only affects leaf-browsing Lepidoptera caterpillars. The typical treatment for that is to spray very fine droplets, and you're spraying fine droplets over a forested area to allow the spray to penetrate and percolate through that canopy, and you get good deposition within the canopy with those small droplets. But the consequence of going to small droplets is that they're very prone to drift. And if you're spraying a large forest estate, for instance, which they do in Canada and the US, the drift is such a concern. You're only concerned when you hit the boundaries of that estate. But when you're doing, for instance, a biosecurity response, you might be right next to a school, or you're in an urban environment. And in those circumstances, then your tolerance to drift is much lower.
Would it actually be a concern for health if you just, flew a helicopter over a whole town and doused it with some of these insecticides? Or is it more that, parents might have some concerns?
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking right to the point. Is that yes, you can, and we have sprayed over entire cities in the past, but it's always come with a lot of resistance. And as much assurance as you like, people are not going to trust it. You just have to look at current political situations around the world and the response to COVID, for instance.
So maybe in future, if we have an outbreak of invasive pests inside an urban environment, instead of carpet bombing a city with insecticide, the authorities could instead send in a swarm of drones to target particular areas or even particular plants where they know the bugs like to hang out. Justin's already been carrying out some experiments along these lines, using fluorescent paint to see just how effective drones are at spraying vegetation, especially large trees.
We certainly found that the spray did penetrate well into the canopy. We studied because the craft is flying quite close to the canopy, and it's also flying quite slow. The wake of the craft is driving down into the canopy, and so that's a potential driver to drive the spray through that deep canopy. So it's quite a potential positive.
Justin says the most exciting prospect is combining spray drones with AI image processing software and LiDAR, basically a kind of laser-based radar. This tech already allows some drones to fly autonomously beneath the canopy while avoiding branches and tree trunks.
Once you start to be able to couple technologies together, you really start to increase the power of their utility. We're definitely looking at the opportunities to identify weeds. Imagine you're looking at a pastoral situation and you've got a whole lot of thistles. Identifying a thistle versus anything else, you can then go and specifically target that thistle, and so you're saving on chemical costs of broadcasting the chemical, and you're treating where it needs to be treated.
Back in Otago, Gavin Udy says this exact technology is already being trialled with another pest, wilding pines. Wilding pines are a massive problem all across New Zealand, and it's very expensive to solve. It means sending in helicopters and ground teams over vast areas of land, armed with chainsaws and herbicides, and as many trees as you remove, there are always more seeds ready to sprout. But what if all that work could happen almost automatically?
The use of drones and wilding pines has been around for a little while now. So we have a site at the moment in Otago where we have a drone goes out and it searches a predetermined area, and it flies through this area searching for wilding conifers. So it's able to identify wilding conifers apart from any other trees. It can then take a GPS location of where that tree is, it can take a photograph of that tree, and it can estimate the size of that tree. After it does its survey flight, all of that information is collated and it's then fed into another drone which is able to carry herbicide, and that drone is then able to go out on a flight path, analysed as being the most efficient flight path, and it's able to go along and spray all those trees, spraying the right amount of herbicide onto that tree, just enough to kill it.
If those trials are successful, they could be scaled up to have swarms of autonomous drones sweeping wilding pines from the landscape, especially if new battery and motor technology can increase their range. And Jordan Munn says, hypothetically speaking, the same could be done with deer and wallabies. There's just one small hurdle they'd have to cross.
We haven't yet got guns on them.
No. Is that your long-term plan?
Look, I'll tell you the truth. If we could legally use a firearm from a drone, safely, of course, it would work. It would work very well. But there'll be a few issues, social issues and legal issues to get to that point. So we don't have to go there. But look, man, you spend some serious amount of time eyeballing animals that you cannot get a firearm to or a person to. So it would be cool, but and it would save a lot of money.
Yeah,
it definitely save a lot of money. But for some reason, I can't see us getting that over the line.
You don't think that Otago high country farmers are going to go for armed drones over that
I don't know.
property?
Look, if you told them that there is a stray wallaby on their farm which is threatening the program, and that we have an armed drone to go and kill it, I'm sure they'd be happy. I'm sure they'd be happy. And I'm not pushing for it, but if somebody said that tool was available, I'd be very interested.
Interesting maybe, realistic maybe not. But while weaponised pest control drones aren't on the horizon anytime soon, other types of autonomous drone-based pest control could be coming to Aotearoa in the very near future.
Thanks, William. That was senior producer William Ray, who spoke to trap and trigger hunting contractor Jordan Munn, Gavin Udy of Otago Regional Council, and Dr. Justin Nairn from Scion. If you'd like to hear more about the history of pest control in Aotearoa, I highly recommend the RNZ podcast Deer Wars. It tells the exciting and honestly slightly terrifying story of deer culling in Aotearoa over the past 50 years. And if you want to hear more of William's multi-award winning work, check out the Black Sheep podcast. He's got an episode coming up about a man who became infamous for his attempts at smuggling native wildlife out of New Zealand in the 1990s. This episode was produced by William Ray with a little bit of help from me and Ellen Rikers. Sound engineering was by Phil Benge, and Tim Watkin is executive producer of podcasts and series at RNZ. Learn more at rnz.co.nz/ourchangingworld, and you can get in touch with the show by emailing ourchangingworld@rnz.co.nz. Tēnā koe I whakaronga mai. Thanks so much for listening. Ko Clark and Kananaho. Have a great week. Kia pai, the wiki.